Hi, welcome to the Pre-Snore History Hub. This video is all about the Truman Doctrine, Marshall Aid or the Marshall Plan, and then Stalin's response to that. So what actually is the Truman Doctrine then? So the USA had hoped that wealthier European countries such as Britain might be able to help rebuild Europe's shattered economies and make communism look like a less attractive option. This is post-World War II. But after 6 years of war, Britain was nearly bankrupt and aid to other countries was becoming impossible. When the British government announced in 1947 that it could no longer provide military support to the Greek government against communist guerrillas, President Truman decided it was time to take action. On the 12th of March 1947, President Truman delivered a speech to the US Congress. The speech was officially given to announce an economic aid package to Greece and Turkey. Truman announced that the US would provide $400 million in aid to Greece and Turkey and sent American civilian and military personnel to the region. However, Truman also used the opportunity to make a clear statement of what he saw as the differences between democracy and communism. He spoke of two alternative ways of life between which every nation must choose. The first way, he said, offered the majority rule and freedom from political oppression. The second was for the will of the minority to be forced upon the majority, which Truman said was communism. Truman believed choosing democracy over communism was like choosing good over evil. He said communism should not be allowed to grow and that the USA was prepared to send troops and economic aid to those countries trying to resist it. So, what actually is the Truman Doctrine? A little bit more information on it. So, these ideas became known as the Truman Doctrine. So, that was just the official title of this speech he gave and Truman's ideas. And it signaled the beginnings of a new approach to international relations for the USA. So before World War II, the US had followed a policy of isolationism, which meant that they kind of kept themselves to themselves and didn't get involved in taking over other countries like Britain and Germany had done with their empires, and they didn't necessarily want to send huge sums of money to different places. However, this policy with the Truman Doctrine had now been completely abandoned, and the USA was setting itself up as the leader of the fight against communism. So isolationism was therefore replaced with the idea of containment. So, what is the Marshall Plan and Marshall Aid? So, the Marshall Plan was a practical outcome of the Truman Doctrine, providing economic aid to help war torn countries in order to stop communism from taking over in Western Europe. Between 1948 and 1952, the USA gave $13.7 billion of aid, in addition to $13 billion already given by the US before the Marshall Plan went into action. The European countries helped by the Marshall Plan were Austria, Belgium, Denmark, France, Greece, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, and West Germany. Britain received more than a quarter of the total aid package. The aid given came in the form of money, equipment, food, and technology. So it wasn't just purely money, there was other things sent as well. The goal was to revive their economies, and the economic impact of Marshall aid in Western Europe was enormous, although it took until the 1950s for the full effects to be seen. The British Foreign Secretary, Ernest Bevin, called it a lifeline to sinking men, giving hope where there was none. In the USA, there was much debate about whether to offer aid to the Soviet Union and its satellite states. It was decided that it could be offered, but as in Western European countries, would first have to agree to a thorough review of their finances. However, the USA knew that Stalin would not allow this, so in practice, Eastern European countries did not benefit from the Marshall Plan. Okay, so this diagram just kind of shows you visually the amount, so US aid per country in millions of dollars that each country receives. So as you can see, Britain and France were kind of the main receivers, and then other countries such as West Germany, the Netherlands, Italy, Austria also received quite high amounts too. So what was the impact on US-Soviet relations? So the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan had a huge impact on international relations from 1947. Any lingering belief that there was still a grand alliance now was gone, as the USA had now set itself up in direct opposition to communist Soviet Union and invited other nations to join it. Stalin's suspicions of the West were reinforced, and he believed he now had evidence that the USA was trying to crush the Soviet Union. The Marshall Plan successfully tied Western European countries into supporting the USA. As Stalin rejected it and set up his own economic plan, Comecon, which I'm going to be talking about in a second, Europe was now divided into two economic and political camps. The history of Europe for the next 50 years became one of intense rivalry and attempts to win diplomatic and political victories over political opponents. So, Stalin's response then. Stalin said that the Marshall Aid was dollar imperialism, and President Truman saw his new policy as a defensive measure to contain communism. Not surprisingly, Stalin did not see it like that at all. He believed that Truman Doctrine showed that the USA was trying to extend its influence in Europe. So he was effectively saying that they were trying to take over different countries in Europe, kind of like how he'd done with the satellite states, not directly, but influencing them. He also thought it was undermining the international role of the United Nations by suggesting that it was America's job to protect the world. Stalin argued that the Marshall Plan was a way of using economic might to divide Europe in two and establish an American economic empire in Europe. The Soviets obviously called it dollar imperialism. The Marshall Plan set Stalin an economic and political challenge. He therefore set up two organizations for the communist countries of Europe. So these two organisations were known as Cominform, which was set up in 1947, and Comecon in 1949. So let's start with Cominform. So this was set up on Stalin's orders on the 22nd of September 1947. It was in direct retaliation to the Truman Doctrine. It was an association of communist parties from all over Europe, and the new body gave Stalin a way of directing and controlling the government of the satellite states. At its first meeting, it rejected the Marshall Plan, and Comecon spread propaganda and accused America of being no different from Nazi Germany. It was also responsible for stamping out opposition to Moscow and ensuring the loyalty of these Eastern European governments. So, Comecon then. Stalin wanted communist states to keep their independence from capitalist governments and did not want the US to become influential in Eastern Europe, so he would not allow the satellite states to accept Marshall aid. He also knew that he needed to offer a positive alternative to American aid if he was to keep the satellite nations under his control. He therefore created an aid package based on communist principles, which was known as Comecon. So it was established on the 25th of January 1949, 2 years after the Marshall Plan was announced. Its members were the Soviet Union, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Poland, and Romania. East Germany and Albania joined the following year in 1950. So Comecon was in direct competition with the Marshall Plan and aimed to support economic development in its member states. It also discouraged trade with the USA and with Western Europe. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the Priestnall History Hub.